Here's the story of 6 buying experts who were very successful in their jobs, leading procurement offices across the country, from Alaska and PA to Arkansas.
So we've talked about a lot of different things that probably need to be addressed or looked at, but and we need to probably start looking at a lot of that right now. So Jane, if you had to kind of summarize what does procurement need to work on right now? What do they need to preparing for now for a work environment, in a home work environment in the future? What are some of the things they need to start working on today?
Well, I think a lot of these things have certainly adjusted very quickly because of the coronavirus. And so, but I think we're going to step back a little bit and start really thinking long term. I know one of the things I miss most when I started working from home, because I'm like all of you, I was used to being in an office for years, is that brainstorming and really the collaboration with that. But you do learn to work through that, and it's just different. So I think there's going to be a lot of different changes. I think we're going to step back and take a look at multiple things. I think the first thing we're going to have to look at is in changing of internal policies. What's that going to look like? If I'm going to work from home, am I allowed to take my chair from the office? Because my chair at home is not real conducive to 9 to 10 hours of sitting in it at the house. So, am I allowed to take that chair? What's going to happen when I leave? Jason mentioned, how are we going to get that equipment back? How are we going to track it? So a lot of these internal policies are going to have to take a look at that. Also, we're going to have to look at it from that legal requirement. And we've talked about it here on this video, that we've got to rethink what our requirements say and how are we going to be able to do that virtually, because we really don't want people in our offices, whether, we could give something to them or them give something to us. So there's going to be a lot of different things looking at these policies. And people ask, so where do we start? I think there are 2 really good places to start. One of them is there is a document out there called Working Remotely, a guide for the public sector, that was published by the Government Finance Officers Association. It really talks about a lot of different key things, like who is eligible, how are we going to do the risk management on this, what's the HR and payroll rules, if I'm sick, do I take a sick day, how does that work? Using personal assets for business activities. And we know the security requirements for our government data is tremendous. How do we safely store all that data when we're working from home? There's much more in this brochure. I encourage you to download that, because it does talk a lot of things. It even talks about communication and morale, as David mentioned. How are we going to keep that up? Because we are social creatures, particularly in procurement. We love people. We love solving problems. So looking at that. The other one is the GSA actually has a guideline called Workforce Mobility and Telework Policy. And one of the things it addresses in there is, if I am required to come to the office, they have to give me 2 hours notice, because, I may not be prepared to drive in for a meeting at, that when the governor comes over or the mayor comes in. So there's a lot of different things. Both of these policies, I think, could be very beneficial to people. But then we're going to have to think about too, right? Funding. Funding's going to have to change, because funding today, as we all know, is really geared to set up all of our offices in our government buildings. But if that changes and we do more hoteling, so that we don't have a desk, we don't have an office, that we work from home, and then we have to come in for a meeting or for something else to do, then we're going to have to figure out how to do that. We've also got to ask for funding to make that happen. How are we going to provide enough assets for our employees that are working remotely? And not just IT equipment, but there's office products. I mean, there's things that we use all the time that we've got to have access to. And how are we going to be able to electronically access all those file folders? If I want to get ready to post a new bid, but I want to go back and look at how we bid it last time, I need to be able to go look at that. So a lot of electronic software is going to be purchased. E-procurement's been mentioned. Having a central repository with that e-procurement system so that we can have access to things easily and quickly. So there's going to have to be funding for software. I know a lot of us have wanted e-procurement systems in the past, and wasn't a whole lot of budget or appetite for that, but I think that hopefully will change during this crisis. We're seeing how critical it is that we have access to a good e-procurement system and electronic documentation and signatures. And it's not just us in budgeting asking for it differently, but think about our governing entities, our councils, our legislatures, our boards. They're going to have to think differently, and when they see those budget requests, because they're going to be in different buckets of money. So I think there'll be changes on all sides of this equation as we look at budgeting. Then as we move from that paper-based process to automated, if we ever wanted to kill paper, and we've all been moving that direction, I think the virus is going to help us kill it. It's going to help force the issue for governments to put that money in the budget so that we can move away from that paper. The biggest thing I think of when I think of paper is it has germs all over it. We don't know who's touched it. We don't know how many people have touched it. They could have sneezed and just touched that piece of paper before they handed it to me, whether that's coming from an internal source or an external source. We have got to be able to move past just accepting rudimentary electronic work, emails and other documents like PDF files. We've got to have a more robust way to share those documents, internalize those documents, and be able to modify them and push those back out. So I think it's going to be really interesting as we look at more work-life balance. How are we going to provide that for our employees? Because all of us that work from home, we know it's hard to shut it off.